Hey everyone! The Apple Boom here. I got my webcam working. This is a Postmortem on version 3. Finally got to play test it. Also, for those of you who are only watching me on YouTube, I'm also now starting to stream some of my development and stuff on Twitch. I'll just link that in the description. Alright, so you can finally see me, and you can see my stuff and notes, and I hope I don't drop this. Don't worry, I have a camera-only view when I need to show papers, although that shouldn't be too often. Alright, let's go back to there. Okay, so we played a lot. I'm going to ignore that. We played a lot. Hopefully my phone's muted. I played 3 games. Each game took about half an hour. I think it's a solid place, especially since my group tends to be slow with how long we play games. For some reason, my group just takes longer than most. Oh, also I have my I got my cursor on screen now, so that's good. Okay, so here's what we found. Oh, I didn't bring that with me. Okay. The 4-turn thing ended up working really well. The game kind of turned into, which is what I kind of expected, but it was really good to feel it. It turned into, you saw your first hand, and your teammates, or maybe not your teammates if it's just 1v1, whatever. You saw your first hand, and then you plan out the game. It's like, okay, I start out with this hand, and I'm this character. You started out with that hand, and you're that character. So, yeah, excuse me. So let's plan out what are we gonna do from here, and we have 4 turns to execute our plan. That is how the game ended up going, and I really liked it from that perspective. It's exactly what I was going for. Now in terms of cards, we tested all the characters, and wait, what's this? Oh, okay. These papers I don't need right now. And I wrote down my notes. So I'm going to bring things up as I talk about them. Abilities is the first one. Oh, by the way, the tool ended up working really, really well. Better than I expected. Okay, so first, let's go over the abilities, how I feel about them. I think the engineer ability is fine. Real solid. Can't really say much else about it. It works as intended. I think the saboteur ability doesn't work. For one, it was worded, the way that it's worded right now actually confused one of the guys that I was playing with, which is good that I'm playtesting with these other people, because I think, oh, these wordings make complete sense to me. I know what they mean. I know what I intend. And the idea behind the saboteur ability was either you get to discard a card in one of your teammates' hands, and they get a new card because it's something you don't want and you want something else. Which didn't work, we'll get into that. Or you effectively discard a random card from your opponent's hand. The way that it was worded was the guy thought that he could choose a card and have me discard it. So I was playing engineer, which has the promotion ability, which is called emergency supply, on the queen. And so he just looked at me and he says, alright, I'm a saboteur, I'm using my ability, discard a queen. And I'm like, that's not how that works. So it's a good thing that we did that. So the intent got through, and I could see that it was something that was misleading in the wording. And what was it? Yeah, also, the funny thing after that is when he did make me discard a random card, he made me discard my queen. So that was funny. But still, that wording was weird, and that's good to get out when we're playtesting. But the other thing is, this doesn't kind of work, because the intent behind the discard a card and then draw a card is so you can use it in a utility way. You don't like a card, you can get a new one. But the thing is, you can just draw a card on your turn. And it's like, oh, I want a new card. I'm just gonna use my ability. I'm sorry, my action phase to draw a card. That's it. I don't need this ability. There's the possibility that you could technically draw 2 cards that way, but it's just not worth it compared to its neutered offensive ability, because instead of making your opponent discard a card, pretty powerful action, now they discard a card, but then they draw a new card. So it kind of neuters the offensive bit of it. So I'm changing it so that instead of discarding a card and drawing a card, it's just target player discards a random card. And it gets rid of all this weird wording. And yeah, makes it much more simple, to the point. It kind of takes away the utility, but it empowers the offense. And since the utility didn't really do much in the first place, that's an empty cup. Losing the utility to empower the offense isn't a problem. Okay, soldier's ability, damage target construct in the field. Let me bring up the soldier cards to make my point. This was problematic. It was just too good, because we were doing a soldier mirror match. I think it was in the first game. It was engineer and soldier versus soldier and commando. And my teammate, as a soldier, played field camp. And then the next turn, my opponent used their ability to get rid of field camp. And it's like, well, well, this is supposed to be a really powerful, good, solid option, and you just destroyed it for pretty much no cost. So I had 2 ways I could go about this. I can either make this make this thing more defensible by start implementing a health system, but that's kind of complicated and gets into that feature creep and bloat that I was talking about before with keywords. Or I can do what I'm planning on doing and make it so this has more of a cost to it now. So now I have damage target construct in the field, user discards a card. That's how I worded it in my notes. I should reword it, though, to be discard a card to damage a target construct in the field, because I wanted so that you can't use the ability if you can't discard a card. Although that's already a really awful position to be in, but that's how I wanted it to be. And the commando ability was good, too. It ended up working in a very interesting way, as my friend Kevin brought up, with phone help. Phone help isn't as bad as I thought it could be, because since the commando can never really load up the cannon, then doing that to load up the cannon isn't as big of a deal, which ended up being a good thing. So those are my thoughts on the abilities. Okay, let's go over soldier, because that's the first one in my pile. Alright, soldier cards. Soldier is the most changes out of all of these. So, yeah, body armor. Body armor was weird. It's just one of those things. It's like this whole discard 2 cards to equip thing. It's a really big cost for a really big payoff. But the problem is, you have to use 2 turns. You have to use half of your time, unless your teammate's also equipping things to you, or your opponent does something weird and equips something to one of your guys, which are both unlikely scenarios. You have to spend 2 turns to equip something to somebody just to get rid of it for body armor. I just don't like that, because it just with everything else he could do with his other good options and how good some of his equipment is, this isn't worth it. really. So what I'm thinking of doing, one of my thoughts is to make this a counter, and instead of an equipment, like rename it to something like improvised armor, and you discards 2 equipped cards to block damage. So it's kind of like block, but you have to pay for it. But even then, it's block, but you have to pay for it. And yeah, that's just, it's a rare card. That's as good. That's like worse than a common card on another character. It's not a huge. I mean, it's not as big of a deal as it could be because the commander is supposed to have more powerful cards. But I don't like that. So what I've been thinking about doing, in fact, I think I wrote that down. Yeah, is just taking the Saboteur's health kit and giving it to the soldier. Field camp. Field can end up being really good. No longer skipping your action phase in the field, getting those cannon rolls, since each individual turn matters so much more, getting cannon rolls in the field, or being able to draw a card in the field, really, really good. I like how this plays out. It was a little weak, because of the whole soldier thing, but after that tweak, I think it felt better. And even then, having it out for just 1 turn is still really, really good if you're using it. Alright, trenches. Trenches just kind of didn't work. I don't really know what to do about this. I might just get rid of it. But it felt like it didn't work. It's supposed to block attacks proactively, but now that block exists, it's just not as great of a thing. Not a whole lot else to say about that. This is something I'm really iffy about. Alright, machine gun. Machine gun, at the end of the day, it just felt, when using it, it just felt like a worse fire. And it was just kind of, and I wasn't totally sure what to do about it. Also, this is supposed to say construct. That was a mistake, and I corrected that in my notes. I was thinking about making this unblockable if you play it from the field, but then I decided to do something else, which I'll get into later. Camouflage. Equipped to a player during play phase. Equipped player resolves their card as if they were at home. This needs a rewrite because people didn't understand this. The idea behind this is that the timing of playing something out is the same as if you played it at home. Like, the intent is, let's say you're a soldier in the field and you play machine gun. The intent is for you to be able to use this effect, damage all opposing players and up to 1 played card or 1 construct. And you can do that with the timing as if you were at home. So you could possibly like go first, because the whole timing thing with the play phase, card effects play from home resolve first. That's to give some more power to home and make field riskier. And so this is supposed to, wrong one. This is supposed to pretty much get rid of this part. And so you can play it at the same time. What the people read it as was, if you're in field, you get the home effect while playing a card in field, which is just weaker. And so that's not what I wanted at all, and that needs a rewrite. I also have some more changes to that I want to get into later. Additional resources. This is really powerful. I found out card draw is really, really powerful. Especially, I got this as playing with a soldier in the last game we played. I somehow was able to get both additional resources, 7 and 8, onto both of my characters on my team early in the game, and they ended up just drawing their entire decks pretty much. And that was really, really, really good. This is really powerful. Um, and because of how powerful this is and how weak this felt, I decided I'm going to flip these and make this a rare and make this an uncommon. And the one thing that I'll power this up a little bit, since this is a rare now, I'm going to change it from equip player draws 2 cards to equip player draws 3 cards. Also notice on the wording, this is this is intentional. This can't stack. So it's not you draw 2 extra cards or you draw 1 extra card. It's you draw 2 cards. Well, 3 cards now, but yeah, so it's not stackable, and that's on purpose. And reactive positioning. This I just don't like. It's a cool idea, but it just never panned out well. That you get to move compared to how your opponent's moving. You were kind of gonna do that anyway with how these plans go. So, I'm just getting rid of this. Just getting rid of it, and then I'm moving camouflage. This one down into the common slot because this is a decent ability, but it's not the great. It's a good ability, but it's not the greatest thing in the world. So that's why I think it's good as a common, and this is just I don't like it. So to visualize that better, let me switch over. I made it so this visualizes it better. The Jack and the 7 and 8 are switching places with each other. The camouflage is going into the common slot, and I'm getting rid of reactive positioning. Alright. And switch over. So that's my feelings on the soldier. Next one up is the engineer. Where is he? Okay, engineer. This one was real. I really liked how this all came out. Short fuse is real nice. You have to set it up, but it's really powerful. I like this. Supercharge ended up being really good. I was wondering if the +2 wasn't enough, but after playing 3 games with it, and with this mattering, yeah, this is good. +2 is a real solid place for it. Because it's also, since it's not cannonballs, you don't have that type of interaction where it can be taken out more easily. It is a construct, and it's hard to hit constructs that aren't in the field. So, this is a real solid card. It's more defensible than a cannonball, and it gives you the +2. I like it. Emergency supply. Good solid card. Yeah. This is just a really good card, because it's promotion. This has always been good in every single game this has ever been in. Yeah, not a whole lot to say about that. Load up, good, solid card. Again, rolling the cannon die is a good option. Yeah, I actually was watching the cannon counter for one game, and we only ended up rolling the cannon die 8 times. So, with that in perspective, getting 2 more rolls is really solid. I think 2 of those rolls were from load up, but yeah, I think this is really good. Fire, I think this isn't a great place. You only get 2 of them, so you have to think about where you're going to put it. But you could go in the field and do an unblockable fire, but you have to set it up. You have to use your action phase to set it up with kits, and you give up the cannon rolls to take somebody out. I like this. I really like this. Now I'm going to skip over real quick to multi-tool. Multi-tool is a good, solid card. It gives you a safe cannon. It gets you a safe cannon die roll. You don't have the chance of getting the double, but you do. You get what you want. If you want a cannonball, you get a cannonball. If you want armor, you get armor. And you have to spend a kit. So it still has that drawback to it because it is a cannon power-up. So that's real nice. Barricade. Now this is one where I think... Actually, this should probably be rewritten to 1 instead of A, just to keep it... to keep the formatting consistent, make it easier to see and everything. But anyway, Barricade. This is the only one I'm not great about. I feel a little iffy on this one. This one just doesn't feel as powerful to me. But some people, after talking to some of my friends about it who are playing with me, they all think it's good, and they really like it. And so my thoughts on this are pretty much, 1, maybe it is good and I'm just not seeing it right now. That's why I play test with other people. 2, if this game ends up shipping or whatever, and I have the basic character, whoops, and I have the basic character with all of these really solid cards, and one I'm iffy about, but the rest are really solid, I'm okay with that. I'd rather have better than that, but I'm okay with that idea of it not being absolutely perfect. So that's how I feel about this. My one friend really liked getting into the field and trying to set up the armor, but he got blown up for it a lot because he didn't do it carefully enough. And so that was interesting. And I like how the kits resource thing is balanced now with it. So that's my thoughts on the engineer. Commando. Okay, this is another interesting one. Mainly because it's a newer character. Okay, Commando. I think I mentioned this before. I'm going to mention it again. Commando's It's very interesting that the Commando is in the field all the time. Well, pretty much all the time. But they're the only character that can't actually damage somebody. There's that. Demolish has no damage. Refresh doesn't damage. Unload doesn't damage. Phone help doesn't damage. Kidnap doesn't damage. Power up doesn't damage. Block doesn't damage. So let's go down the list. Demolish. Removing all armor is a more powerful option than I thought it would be. Because there were many times where my opponents had like 3 or 4 armor on their cannon. And there was one time I got Demolish off and it really won the game for me. So this might be good by itself. Draw 3 cards. This is a weird thing. It's slightly better than Power Up on its own. And the thing is, Demolish and a lot of these aces are supposed to be your end game cards. Like, this is obviously an end game option. Like you play on your 3rd or 4th turn. But then, draw power is something you want early. So you have that end game option mixed with the early game option on the same card. That's really weird. And it doesn't mesh well with itself. So it ends up being kind of a hybrid card that you can use early game or end game for different reasons. That's not what I really want with the Commando. So I'm probably just going to end up getting rid of this and seeing how it goes. I might also end up doing more, but I'm going to get into that after I go over the rest of the cards. Refresh, shuffle target players, discard pile back into the deck. This is just good. This was good before, it's good now. You can get cards back that you lost. It's really good. Unload. Target cannon loses 3 cannonballs. That's really good. It's actually, in some ways, it's kind of better than Demolish, which is interesting, even though it doesn't have the draw. But this is a really good card. I like this one. Phone help. I went over this before when I was going over the engineer. It's the old load up. It's really good, and it's not as good as I thought it would be because the Commando is constantly skipping their ability phase on purpose. They're not loading up the cannon like a normal character would. So this isn't as powerful as I thought it would be. Kidnap. Kidnap at first was weird to me when I was playing with it, but then I realized, because it's like, it's supposed to set up that you can hit somebody in the field, but due to the relative rarity of attack cards in draw, and that you want to make them count, setting up a kidnap with an attack, especially when both turn order when resolving cards is random, and actually I'm going to make this go a little down. Turn order is random when resolving cards, and using a card. No, I'm sorry. Not only is it random, blah. The commando is usually going last because they're in the field, and they don't have anything inherent that lets them go at a normal speed in the field. So it's kind of hard to combo this with something. That's why I added this whole thing. I think I did that in another video, but I just wanted to mention that again because that was that was dumb. That move target player to the field. All right, movement phase. They move back. No, that's not what's supposed to happen. So yeah, but this ended up being really good in retrospect when I started using it and messing with it, because it meant it's probably better to look here. Now your opponents are skipping. You just force them to skip their action in draw phase on their next turn, along with them being vulnerable. They're vulnerable on their next turn to a fire or something. That's really good. Also, you could possibly mess with them if they want, let's say they're, I don't know, Saboteur. Let's say they're a Saboteur. Actually, no. I'll keep that up anyway. Engineer is a better one. Let's say they're an engineer. They wanted to use Barricade, but now if they use Barricade, it'll do something completely different. So it messes with them that way. This ended up just being really good, solid card. Power up. I was afraid this wouldn't be as good, but it ended up being good. I mean, I thought that drawing 2 cards wouldn't be that great, but since the commando doesn't have the ability to draw cards during the action phase if they're hurting for good cards, and they end up kind of hurting for better cards because their common is not a playable card. Yeah, because they can't draw, and they are hurting for cards more often than other players might be. Having draw power on the play is good, solid. Block. Block was weird when I was messing around with it. It just was way too powerful, because you do get a decent amount of them. So I eventually made it play when a player would damage another player. That damage is nullified. That all stayed the same, but I added defending player goes home if they're in the field, and they skip their next movement phase. All right, I can use a diagram here. Look, I got a fancy new diagram. Oh, by the way, for those of you wondering, this is just a character I made back in August as kind of a proof of concept thing, and I just decided to take it because, hey, it's a pre-made character that I have access to. So let's move. All right, let's say the commando's here. Okay, I can do that now. Let's say the commando's here. This person fired on them. Commando blocks it. Gets sent home. And now can't move back. Because they can't move back, they're not in the field because that's where they want to be. And they want to be in the field because of their ability. They skip the play phase while at home. They can't play a card. They have good cards and they can't play them now. So I think that wasn't a good spot there, because I was playing at one point, and my opponent came into the field. Actually, boom, boom. My opponent came into the field as a soldier, and then used machine gun and fired on both my characters. And so this guy got sent home, blocking, and then also blocked that one, and got and so now these are both home, and they can't move. And while I did block the machine gun, and I'm not dead, this character is still got good bang for their buck, taking that risk and going out there and attacking. And then my commando couldn't play next turn, and that's losing 1/4 of your plays, which that's where I want the commando to be, where he has the risk of not being able to play or getting knocked out or something. Commando. There. So that modification of block I thought was pretty good. It might be a little too powerful now, because what happens now with the commando, how it ended up playing out, was the commando is supposed to be an Akuma or like a Shadow Mewtwo type character, or a glass cannon. Really powerful, but they can die easy. Because of losing the skipping the action phase still, since they were out in the field all the time, hindered it a lot. Hindered this character a lot. And also a lot of these cards just ended up not being as powerful as I expected them to be. Also, it's a lot. The commando's a lot more defensible now because of this block being on common. So I'm not really sure how to get rid of the commando's defenses. What I'm thinking about doing is one of two things. Either you block like normal and you go home, but if you discard a second block, you don't go home. You don't get that penalty. So there's some back and forth. Or I could make it that block is as it is. And to use block, you have to discard a card. Just to use it, you have to discard another card. Yeah, it would make block less powerful, so he's not as defensive, not as be like, hey, I'm out here, but I can just block everything anyway. But still give him that defensive option, so he's not overwhelmed. Like I think I talked about this one on stream. But when I was doing an example on a whiteboard of an example turn, this commando, before I set block to a common, block was still on a king, I think it was. You have, I saw that commando's on team 2, team 1, the soldier and the saboteur on team 2. The commando has to block a gun that's probably going to come in soon, and they have to block a reflect from using kidnap, because the commando probably wants to use kidnap, and they also have to block that probably block that reflect. Saboteur probably has reflect because they have 2 of them in their hand. And you draw almost half your deck at the beginning of the game. Just by chance, you should really expect Saboteur to start out with at least 1 reflect. So he had 1 block that wasn't even in his hand in his deck. He had 1 block in his deck and it wasn't even in his hand, and he had 2 attacks that he had to contend with in the beginning, in the first turn. I don't want that situation again, because that was bad. There was no real counterplay there. The commando was just dead by luck. And it was a situation that was going to come out a lot. I was thinking putting block on a... See, I was not comfortable with putting block on an uncommon either, because I still think you wouldn't get it enough for you to make meaningful choices. But now that you get it all the time, and you can use a lot of blocks, now it's a little too powerful. So these are a lot of thoughts that I've been thinking about with to make this less powerful. Because I don't want him to be super defensive, but I don't want him to just die because the roll of the dice says so. I want him to die because he put himself out there on purpose in some way, or his opponents really came together to get rid of him, but not as much as they would have to for other characters. The last thing I've been thinking about for modifying block is making it so block can only block himself. He cannot block his teammates, because if you bring back to this example over here, let's bring this character back out into the field. When Machine Gun went off, he ended up being a really defensive character and blocked this guy and himself and survived. I ended up winning that game, by the way. Yeah. So those are a lot of thoughts that I've been going through my head on how to modify block. Also, you can see kind of what characters we really tested more than others. I really tried to test the Commando and the Soldier more, and so I have a lot more thoughts on them. Also, the Saboteur and the Engineer are just in better places because they're older characters. This is the first time these characters have been really used. I played the Commando in 2 of my games. Yeah. Okay, so that's all of my thoughts on the Commando. I like all these cards. This one needs work. This one needs work, but they're not awful, and they can be worked. But still, with that whole thing I was saying, again, I think he's not as powerful as I thought, and he's too defensible. I think I'm going to make block weaker, and I'm just going to go through a bunch of these and power them up. This one, there's no real way to power this up without it being stupid. Actually, I could possibly just have Refresh do target teams shuffles their discard pile back to the deck. That's actually not an awful idea. Just thought of that one. Unloads target cannon, loses 3 cannonballs. I mean, I can make it you lose all cannonballs, but that's kind of ridiculous, I think. Phone help might just bump that up to 4. That might not be the worst thing in the world. Kidnap's fine where it is. And power up might bump up to 3. So yeah, that's where I'm thinking the Commando is. Alright. Last one that I have notes on. The Saboteur. Let's move over. Okay. I kind of like where Sabotage is, but I think it's actually a little too powerful. Because it's noted, one of the original issues I have with Sabotage in the version 1 is it had no counterplay. Now, you don't lose cannonballs, but it still kind of has no counterplay, because while there's all of this blocking now, blocking damage, it's what I just said, it's blocking damage. The only card in the game that actually blocks attacks outright is Reflect. It's on 1 character. So, this might end up being too powerful. I think I'm just gonna have the power of it. Just, the enemy team discards 1 card for every 2 cannonballs at home. In the field, enemy team discards 1 card for every cannonball. I think that's what I'm gonna do with it, because we got hit in 1 game with a Sabotage. My team got hit with a Sabotage, When my opponent was at home, let's just draw this out real quick. My opponent was at home here, and they used sabotage. We were both at home. It was actually an NG Saboteur mirror. NG, Saboteur, Saboteur. This guy used sabotage. We had 4 cannonballs. I had 3 cards in hand. My teammate had 2 cards in hand. We would have had to discard pretty much everything. That was really, and this is something that we couldn't really control a lot, being played from home by our opponent. We ended up surviving that because my teammate, being a saboteur, had Reflect in their hand and just nullified it with Reflect. And since it wasn't targeting a player, it didn't have anything to do with damaging that person back or whatever. Yeah, nullified Reflect. Well, I'm nullified with Reflect, but still, that was kind of like, ooh, that would have been game. That definitely would have been game at that point if that went off, and that was from home. So I think this is too powerful. I think I'm just gonna have that. Scorched Earth, Panic Button, good, solid move. Don't have much else to say about it except there I have a funny story. So that same game, my teammate here was dead. They were dead because they did something. They just took a big risk and got blown up for it. So they were damaged and they were out. So it was 1-2. Let's use the highlights layer here. They were dead. Boom. Oh, that's not the right button. There we go. They were dead. And there we go. That tool. I was in the field. Oops. I was in the field. Because I was an engineer, I was trying to get an unblockable fire off on this saboteur. My teammate, well no, my opponent on the other side was in the field. Ooh. Let's just move him up to there. We were both in the field. Actually, let me see if I can... Yeah, there we go. We were both in the field. And my opponent, who went first in play, because we were both in the field, and there was no soldier in the game to do anything about that. Wow, this is going on for almost an hour. I'm going to need to limit these to half an hour. He used Scorched Earth, killed himself, killed us, got rid of all of his armor, and then forced a tie. Because it was just, we just like, well, just skip right to the end of the game if everybody's damaged. Instead of playing through all the phases, why would you do that? They're not doing anything. So, he had 4... Their cannon had 4 cannonballs and no armor because they lost all the armor. Our cannon had 3 cannonballs and 1 thing of armor. So we did 3 damage to them, and they did 3 damage to us. Tie. Boom, 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 boom. There. Yeah, that happened. It was really silly. But yeah, that was how that is. Explosives, I think is, I think it's a little weak. Because, it's, a kind of weaker fire. It's on a rare. I'm not totally sure what to do about this, though. Oh, and also the wording's weird. Since I put 1 player in the field here, some people thought that meant you could just do 2 constructs at all, and the intent is it's 2 constructs in the field, so I just have to move that wording around. This one I'm not really sure about. Health kit, I'm just going to move that to the soldier at this point. So the Saboteur needs a new rare card. Reflect's great. Reveal and discard is great, especially in the early game. Knowing what your opponent has and then being able to mess with their plans at the same time. Really, really good. Like this might end up being too powerful in the end. Teardown, I thought it was going to be weak, but it's just a good solid card at this point. This whole thing, well, this thing's kind of nonsensical at this point. I didn't get rid of it because it doesn't hurt to have it on here, and it might end up being an interesting interaction later on. And so that's everything. Those are all my notes on everything. I like where the game is now. Taking half an hour with my friends playtesting. I'm gonna have to redo some stuff. I have some ideas for some new characters. I'm going to be streaming these more often now. I'm gonna start streaming these. I already did my first stream yesterday. I can move this to here. I'm finally gonna make this folder public. I'm gonna try to limit these videos to half an hour because they've been growing gradually longer, and this one's almost 50 minutes now. And next one, it actually might not be about design and mechanics at all. Next one is probably going to be about aesthetics. So yeah, that's about everything. I don't want this to drag on too much longer. See you guys around.